So welcome back everyone to the first workshop of the day. I hope you are enjoying the conference so far. Today we have the pleasure of welcoming 3 speakers leading inspiring outreach and citizen science initiative focused on insects. So this is our first workshop dedicated to outreach, and I encourage you to also join the second one tomorrow at the same time, if you're interested in learning more about science communication and career development. But first, let me introduce you our panelists. So we have Andy Howe, who is a research fellow at the Forest Research Institute, University of Sunshine Coast in Brisbane, Australia. His work focuses on entomology and insect ecology, and he is part of Insect Investigator Program, a large citizen science initiative connecting schools across Australia with real biodiversity research. We also have Ellen Rotheray, an associate professor at the University of Sussex, specialized in insect ecology and conservation. And today, she will share her experience with the Buzz Club, a citizen science initiative run by researchers at Sussex, where she founded the Overfly Lagoon project. So she'll tell us more about that shortly. And we also have Fran Sconce. She works at the Royal Entomological Society in outreach and learning, and she has been coordinating and organizing entomological outreach events since 2012, and she regularly works with students of all age. She also writes about insects for magazines, websites, and online media. So before giving the floor to our speaker, let me start with a short introduction about outreach and citizen science. So science outreach is all about sharing science beyond academia to inform, inspire, and engage the public, so wider audience, to foster curiosity and an understanding of science and academia work. So it can take different kind of form. For example, it can be games or something edited like article or comics. It can be also something multimedia like a video or podcast. Talking about podcast, we have a new format this year at the conference, so I encourage you to look forward to that, the Meet the PI podcast. And it can also be linked with art and culture, so it's like play or a debate after watching a movie. And it can take place in different kind of environments. So you can do outreach in kind of forums, for example, open days for your university or your lab. It can take place at conference or during roundtables, or it can take place in a school setting or something related to schools, or during a lab visit, for example. And when you are discussing about your science to wider audiences, there are different kind of audiences, of course. You can have to talk to kids or adults, or for example, a specific group of people. So today we will talk about insects. It can be some people that are really specialized about insects, for example, beekeepers. So the whole point is how to adapt the message depending on where and how and to who you want to share your science. And for citizen science, the whole point is about involving members of the public, so again, wider audiences, not about communicating about science, but this time about participating in science research, for example, data collection, analysis, or even project design. So there is a different degree of involvement, can be contributory, like collecting data, or collaborative to co-create a project with the public. So my little introduction is finished, and I will give the floor to, I will stop sharing my screen. Yes. And before, for the next 30 minutes, we'll hear a short presentation from each of our speakers. So we will start with Andy. You can already start to share your screen. I encourage you in the audience to post any question you may have in the live chat, and I will make sure to relay them during the Q&A session. So, Andy, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Catherine. All right, I am Andy Howe, as introduced, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here today, this evening here in Australia. I am just getting my slides to work. There we go. And I am coming to you from Noongar country, which is in Western Australia. I'm doing some field work here. So I just acknowledge the people of the country I am working on at the moment. I live in Brisbane, Meanjin, on Turrbal Yagara country, otherwise on the East Coast. All right, so the aim of this session is to inspire young researchers to get involved in outreach and citizen science, and to show you that developing and taking part in outreach is very much achievable. And I'm going to use two examples to do so. So I'm going to use the action competence framework, which is applicable to everything pretty much. And I'll go into an overview of how that applies to insect conservation. So you can use that to think about the way that you engage with people. And then I will give you an example of why you should be doing outreach and citizen science using the Insect Investigators project that I'm a co-lead on. And I'll get into details in a minute. I'll just say that I work pretty much only with students, kids, and their teachers. And that's because they're the custodians of the future of our planet, and because they're brutally honest, and that's really good for feedback, reflecting on what we do as researchers. All right, so if we have a problem as big as insect biodiversity decline, or you insert your topic there, then there's a couple of ways of thinking about how you go about engaging with that. So we have the traditional on the left there. So if we work down from knowledge, we're imparting some knowledge and we're hoping that there's some sort of pro-environmental behavioural change that occurs after we've imparted that knowledge, and there's some sort of environmental outcome that we're not necessarily sure of what it is. If we take the action competence framework, so it's a sociological framework, and then the example that I'm giving on insect conservation is based on a really cool paper by Peter Lampert from Sweden from 2023, and I really encourage you to have a look at this. So we're the researchers, we have a lot of knowledge, and we can help to educate people about big complex problems. Action competence comes after that, so we want to have circular discussions with people about what is the problem, in this case, insect biodiversity decline, and then how we go about doing that, how we go about solving that problem, what are the methods that we can use, that these people can use. We have that knowledge, and then we have to help them reflect on those approaches, and then they implement the environmental outcomes. So here I've got dotted lines because we don't necessarily always follow up on those outcomes, but we can, and I think you'll see some examples of that with the other speakers today. So measuring the impact is important. We don't always have to do that, but researchers are super important in this space because we have knowledge that we can collate and then give to people, package in different ways for them to think about. And action competence is all about working out the knowledge and the skills required, and then building confidence in the people who will take the action, and building the capacity to have to make the people feel that they can take action and that they can reflect on the action to work out what is working or not. And then another part of it is the willingness to commit to these actions. And that's a lot about intrinsic motivation. And we can't, as researchers, go and say, hey, you should do this, but this action competence framework can help them develop that willingness to do that. So if I just read from the paper, it says a person who is action competent in the context of insect conservation knows about actions to sustain insect biodiversity and the relevance of these actions, has confidence in their own skills and capabilities to take real actions, and is willing to take these actions. So these actions include both direct actions in the personal environment and indirect actions encouraging others to sustain insect biodiversity. And kids are super cool. Kids are super cool like that because they have the the family around them, and then they can start asking questions of their parents who might have specific behaviors like spraying herbicides in the garden, and the kids have knowledge about, oh, that has a negative impact on all sorts of stuff, and then they can ask those spiky questions of their parents. All right, so just a couple of very simple examples. So this is a 40 by 40 centimeter piece of turf that I bought from the workshop. What do you call it? The doesn't matter, warehouse. Well, what do you call it? We buy tools and stuff, garden supplies, that place. And then I placed it on the pavement at a environmental festival. And then I stopped parents and kids and had a whole heap of elements of habitat for insects. And then I said, hey kids, try and make something out of this that is related to insect habitat. And this was such a simple exercise. I was talking to the parents, the kids were making this habitat, and you can see that there's personality in the different designs that the kids made, right? So already at that stage, something so simple as this, they're starting to develop an autonomy, and then we're having a conversation about how you could do that in your yard, right? I then scaled this up to about 8 schools in Queensland, and this is using the infamous plasticine caterpillars and making habitat for insects in schools, and then having this part where kids were actually testing hypotheses about what would work. And I've circled here with the yellow there, that's some host plants from some local insects. And then this is me seeding those thoughts prior to the design of these habitats with the insect, the butterfly there. And then I thought this project wasn't going to work at all. And at some level it didn't work very much. But when I went back and had a look at what the teachers were doing with it, I was blown away to see how they grasped all the design of the experiment, and then they were looking at the data, and the kids were writing up the life cycles. So part of me learned that the conversations I had with teachers were fruitful for them, and then I could see how they took that and started to develop action competence in the kids. All right, why should you be doing this? So I'm going to use a much bigger project to illustrate this. This is insect investigators. Dr. Erin Fagan-Jeffries at Adelaide University was the mastermind behind this. It's a bit like the Canadian malaise trap that they have done all over Canada. Very much citizen science, and it was contributory and a little bit of collaborative, because we were looking at solving this problem. So we have 225,000 estimated insects in Australia, and we have described, or Western science has described, 34% of those. The rest of these dark taxa with all the the problems that has for nature management downstream of the fact that we don't know what we have and where it is. So being a citizen science project, we had scientific aims. We were trying to increase the number of DNA barcodes that are available to researchers and the public. We wanted to name new species to try and work on that dark taxa problem. And then for our participants, we wanted to inspire the next generation of taxonomists, insect taxonomists, and then create opportunities for teachers and school kids to connect with their local biodiversity. 50 schools across Australia, Queensland, South Australia, and then Western Australia. And I was responsible for all the schools in Queensland. They used malaise traps, so they were involved in, they did all the collection. And then, of course, we were always feeding information back to them. And what we got out of it was about 14,000 specimens that were sequenced, and just over 5,000 unique OTUs that came out of that. And the schools are different. So there's some species that go across schools, but there's a lot of uniqueness in the school. And that was really special for the people. That was one of the feedback points they gave us, was that, we've got this unique biodiversity at our school, in our schoolyard, and we can work with that in different ways. So the why. So we surveyed participants, and what we get out of it is that students showed a greater interest in insects, nature, and science. So you can seed those ideas, you can give them authentic experiences, and that is us. So you as researchers who can do that. We built action competence in the teachers because they were then much more confident in working with insects in their teaching practice, which totally blew me away. But it's like teacher development, so it makes sense. And then a lot of the people we worked with were remote schools, as you could see on that map. Most of our schools are in cities, but all those other ones don't get as many opportunities. So reaching out to them is a real opportunity for them to feel like they're part of something bigger. And authentic experience is so important, and that's something that we can give as researchers. And then a whole heap of things. This is our paper from this year. It's got a lot of nice stuff about what works. And I'm happy to take questions about what not that it doesn't work, but yeah, what takes a lot more time. But a lot of it is being there and feeding back information and talking about things. So you're giving a lot of time to help them understand what it is they're doing, and then they can see the sense in that. That's really key. Okay, so one of the crazy things that came out of this was this introduced species that is known from the neotropics. And the only other records that are known of this species are from Europe. And then we found one of these in a trap in Brisbane. And what absolutely blew me away is that we got the kids involved in this study that Santiago did from Berlin. It's about a little Psychodidae, so a moth fly, and it turned up in this trap out of nowhere, first record for Australia, and the teachers took that and they implemented a whole task in English writing and introduced species and invasive species that was weaved into this, and the kids are like trying to work out where this came from, and this beautiful big learning opportunity just came out of working with this amazing little insect that popped up in Brisbane. All right, so just to sum up, we can do this. We can talk to teachers, and we have to do this again and again. I always go in and talk to kids as researchers. So you use language that makes them feel like they're researchers and they're exploring the world, right? And then they get it. They're like, okay, I'm doing this. I'm a researcher. So I hope my example showed you that simple is fine, creative is awesome, being yourself is really important, and we almost have an obligation to share that knowledge. We can't make those bigger picture, we can make those bigger picture problems or challenges easy to solve if we're working with citizen science. And then, yeah, make mistakes. That is definitely research. And I think the last one says you have to feedback, because my thing is covering it. It says feed information back to your community so that the loop is always there. And then you'll pick out where you can promote action competence and help people work out why and how they can improve that.
So thank you, Andy. That was great. I mean, I have lot of questions, and there are also some questions in the chat already. But we keep that for the Q&A session. And now we will listen to Ellen. So you can go ahead and share your screen. And meanwhile, I give a reminder, if you have a question, write it in the chat. I will relay it. Ellen, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I hope you can see the first slide again. We did
Yes.
Yes, okay. Thanks so much for inviting me to speak. I really enjoyed Andy's talk. It's really inspiring. My project that I'm going to talk about is a little sort of smaller and niche, but it touches on many of the points that Andy made. So this is about the Hoverfly Lagoons project, which is a citizen science project that I created. It is largely focused on people doing this in their gardens. Oh, hang on. So the Hoverfly Lagoons project came about because Dave Goulson at the University of Sussex came up with an idea for a citizen science initiative, a charity that runs projects to engage people in collecting data, yes, but also that engaging with people and education opportunity as well. He asked the lab at the time if anybody in his lab had any ideas to run projects under this under the Buzz Club kind of framework that he was hoping to kick off. That was 2015, and I was part of his lab at the time, and I was working on bumblebees, but I had previously been working on hoverflies, and the idea came from that to use kind of hoverfly lagoons as a tool for creating habitat and gardens, and first to explore whether this actually could work at all. So it was 2016 when we sort of kicked off trying to explore whether it might work. So my PhD was focused on endangered hoverflies, two specifically in Scotland. One of them was the pine hoverfly that depends on Caledonian pine wood. And as part of this project, I was trying to find ways of developing habitat, which isn't necessarily boring holes into existing stumps, which is the best way to do it, because that's where hoverflies, this particular species, is attracted. But I wanted to develop other ways, so containers sunk into the ground and sitting on the surface that I could easily survey and gather up some information about this particular species and try and restore it, find ways of creating habitat for it. But it never worked for this particular species. It absolutely failed. They are so picky. But I did find a bunch of other species, hoverfly species, and other insects using the containers that I created for this species, for the pine hoverfly. So that was where the potential came for using it in different ways. And actually, I was hoping to explore using it in agricultural contexts until the Buzz Club came along and there was this opportunity. So the containers are essentially hoverfly lagoons are basically mimicking existing microhabitats. So that's tree holes in standing live trees. So beech trees in the UK often have bark-lined tree holes develop and water. They fill up with rainwater and leaf litter, and this creates the perfect microbe-rich environment for hoverfly larvae to develop in. They are filter feeders. They're like mini baleen whales filtering microbes in the water. And what's missing from a lot of gardens is this kind of habitat, because we rarely have, the woodlands and trees, large trees, granny sized trees in gardens. So the idea was to kind of create habitat for this environment and then see if it would work. So kind of come up with an answer for this deficit and see how it actually helped wildlife and biodiversity in gardens. This also occurs in ditches as well. So ditches and anywhere where little stagnant patches of water might build up and get kind of micro-rich, as well as ponds, mini ponds and things like this. But I first needed a name for it. So I needed a name that was attractive to people. And I think this is a lot to do with the success of this particular project, to capture people's imagination. Because essentially, like, all it is a rotting mini bog of eternal stench, and I'm not kidding you about the stench. So if they are filled with something like freshly cut grass or fresh, even the leaf litter, it really does start to smell, and the dense ones especially. And if you don't wear gloves, then it can be particularly difficult to get that stench off your hands. But so I needed something that wouldn't initially repel people to get involved in the project. And so Hoverfly Lagoons, after thinking for a while upon the name, felt to me like a good kind of description that might encourage people to imagine, hoverflies sitting in a lagoon, sipping a cocktail. And I asked ChatGPT to actually create an image of this. This is the wrong life stage, though. So I asked it to try again, and after many iterations later, this is the best I got. And this tells you something about how much more engagement we need to do if the AI or the up-to-date AI doesn't know what a hoverfly larva looks like. But this was considered the cutest of all iterations by my daughter, who was 9 at the time. And I think this is the thing about citizen science. It needs to be something appealing or attractive to people for them to initially try something out, rather than kind of what essentially it is, which is counting maggots in a rot box. So the advantage of the Hoverfly Lagoons project is low cost, very easy to follow methods. You're basically counting larvae and pupae and then rearing the adults, but you just pop the pupae in a jar and send the photo off to us to identify. Um, it can be done in any outdoor space for all ages as well, and it's novel. So I wrote this piece for the IUCN report to the European Commissions in 2022, and what it was, they really wanted this as part of their report because there was really very little examples of conservation efforts for hoverflies in Europe, and I think the novelty kind of intrigues people. Suitable for all ages, so particularly children, and it is similarly to what Andy was saying about focusing on kiddies. I think this is really important, especially in this day and age with this disconnect I feel many children have with nature. And I have brought it to schools with the children loved it, the teachers not so much. Um, but it is an opportunity, isn't it, to teach children about life stages. So they've learned a lot from the very hungry caterpillar, and we know a lot about sort of butterfly development. But look, there's also these other insects, and there's hundreds of them of different species, and this is how they develop, and this is what we need. And I think, awareness sparks care, and connection begins with understanding. And kiddies that like right down to just counting maggots, they do get quite excited about. Um, they are also equally fairly disgusted by the smell, dependent on your lagoon. You can make less smelly lagoons, and I'd be delighted to tell you how to do that. I think as well, so when you spend some time, this project sort of forces people to spend time observing or just sitting in nature because they have to go through these lagoons and count what's in there and identify and take images. And just being there, getting this insight into this world that they otherwise wouldn't really know exists, and really observing and spending a little time wandering around in this world, you'll likely see something interesting, if not quite incredible. And these lagoons can be jam-packed with life, so that the images on the screen here show all these little breathing tubes from hoverflies, but also all sorts of other life roaming around in the lagoon. So the glass lagoons actually make quite fun things to create because you can see everything going on inside. It also gives me an opportunity to excite people about or for me to capture the stuff that I'm seeing using microscopes. So here, just zooming in on a hoverfly larvae moving along, I think for me is quite fascinating. So I've added all these to YouTube, and I think having different images of people for people to have a look at can be really interesting. Lots of ways for people to learn more and get inspired. There's a hoverfly trapped under this the ice in this particular image, and I've sped it up. And what do they do when the lagoon freezes over? This one is speeded up with lots of individuals moving around inside of that glass lagoon, which I find quite fascinating. And then the top left image is a hoverfly larva hatching out of an egg, and I cannot tell you how excited I was to capture this because you just don't know when this is going to happen, and it took a lot of time staring at the microscope. So sharing these images and the excitement and kind of an insight into something that they would never otherwise see, is can be super cool and increase engagement in these things. The other insights that I've shared are things, insights into the interspecific and just differences between species and their ecology. So this is a species called Halophilus pendulus, and it's the only one that lays eggs in this way on the underside of leaves. It lays them in these neat little rows, and for me, it's quite fascinating. And it gives insight into kind of what we need to think about when we're creating this habitat in gardens. To have leaves kind of over the water body might be important if you're wanting to attract something like Halophilus pendulus. And then there's other species like Aristales pertinax who dump their eggs in a great pile on the water surface or around about. and just sort of a better understanding these species differences. You know, not only do many species use these lagoons, but they actually behave very differently. And what can we do about designing things and making sure there's enough diversity in our gardens to attract all these different species and really learn more about them. The success of the project in the UK is probably down to this species, Myothropa florea. And showing people the adults as well as because they're mostly counting maggots, but the adults can be very, very beautiful. This is quite a large species and it is very attractive, I think. And really this can be part of the engagement tool, you know, learning again, going back to those life stages and learning about the different life stages and kind of what this rat-tailed maggot, this long-tailed larvae is actually going to turn into. And all of this is kind of quite fascinating to me, and it's exciting to share insights with people. The value of it being a citizen science project as well is, you know, there's so many scientific inquiries that one can ask. And something that would be amazing as a tool, especially something that has been going on for 10 years, is having enough data to use, for example, as a climate barometer, you know, to detect changes in life stages up and down the country or wherever you're running a project. And only really through citizen science can we do something like this, just due to the resources and having people willing to go out and monitor something in their gardens. So this is a kind of a dream and a hope forward for the Lagoons project to use it in this way. And the findings, it's really important. Andy mentioned this as well about communicating with people along the way. I think that's key. So every year we kind of inform, and the findings are really kind of engaging for people as well, to help retain sort of excitement for the project ongoing. So things like we've recorded, you know, almost 300 larvae in one lagoon. We've detected population booms in some species. And we've even described the pupal stage of one species, which was new to science, all because of this citizen science project. So it's quite cool to be kind of part of this thing that's actually churning out results, as well as the application. So we first of all were able to evidence that they work, and all these other aspects. You know, every year we have a result, a message, a take-home message, and this is developing our project, and our next steps will be this, and so on. I think this is really important. That, you know, the people really are part of something that is progressing our understanding and moving forward. I'm not really going in. I've gone over time already, but I have talked about these results a little more on YouTube. So under Ento Live, so Hoverfly Lagoons Project: A Journey into the Past, Present, and Future, which is on YouTube if you wanted to know a bit more about our results. But I also use YouTube as a platform for sharing information and my passions and things. And I talk a lot about, in 3 minutes or so, I talk a lot about behavioral ecology and hoverflies, which adds depth to the BBC Spring Watch segment that I was really disappointed in that happened this year. You could have a look at that as well, should you wish. So the major really result, I think, from this project is engagement, and this is through the spreading the word, Hoverfly Lagoons. I think it comes from the name. So it's that reach. I think it captures people's imagination as well as the novelty. The media have picked it up, and it has traveled the world. So helped not least by people creating their own videos about Hoverfly Lagoons, which this all makes me really, really happy seeing these things pop up. I love it. And it pushes it out to people. So in Wales, they wanted to translate my methods for use in Wales. In Norway, a farmer contacted me wanting to follow my methods and created some amazing habitat on his land and shared it with me. In Australia, it turned up on this short film. They contacted me about hoverflies. Professor over there was working on the research methods and wanted more details. And if you thought it couldn't travel any further than that, a woman in New Zealand contacted me asking for permissions to use the methods and images. So these continued efforts to inspire through social media, through schools, PhD students wanting to do research using it as a model, and the general public as well, doing their own mini experiments and talking about it, I think is really, really cool and really helpful. So just in summary, it is a simple, cheap method, and you can explore so many questions, so many scientific inquiries through citizen science using it, which makes it, I think, partly is why it is so successful. It's also an opportunity to improve hoverfly, well, biodiversity in gardens, really. So at the end of the day, if people just hear about this as a method and introduce some water bodies in the garden, that's a win, whether they're collecting data for the project or not. It also provides that platform for people to observe nature. I think that's really important and improve that connection. And it forces you to sort of stop and look around in your outside space. And then finally, just the name has legs. I think the name is really important, and that kind of thing can be really important for the success of these projects. Thank you.
So thank you, Ellen, for your talk. Yeah, I think the Overfly Lagoon name is quite dreamy, but I also like the smelly sink option. So we also have some questions for you in the chat. So we'll move on to Fran's presentation, last one, and after that we will start the Q&A session. So Fran, you can go ahead and share your slides.
Is that ready?
Yes, it works.
Thank you so much. So hi everyone, and thank you so much, Catherine and the team, for inviting me to speak. And it's great to be part of this amazing conference. It's online as well, so really accessible to lots of people. So I work at the Royal Entomological Society. For a lot of people, that's quite hard to say. It's quite a long-winded word, but we're based in the UK. I come to you from Southwest London, but we are a global society. So I'll talk a little bit about our society, a little bit of promotion, apologies, but every talk I do has to include that. And then I'll summarise quite big picture some of the different types of activities that we do. And then my last slide will be a couple of lessons learned and things to kind of advice for you all. So our society, oh, it's moved forward, brilliant. We've been a charity, we've been around for over 190 years, and we have over 2,000 members in different countries around the world. So we're not just based in the UK. We have 7 scientific journals on different aspects of entomology. So those of you who are looking to publish any insect behaviour research, we do hope you might find a place in our journals. Obviously, loads of journals out there. We organise different events as well. We provide different grants and awards to recognise impact in entomology, and also to enable different people to do different types of projects. But overall, for my work, I'm Senior Outreach and Learning Officer. So I have a overall purpose. So we're to explore and reveal the value and wonder of insects, and to focus on the next generation of entomologists, as both Andy and Ellen have mentioned, thinking about those next people growing up, advocates for insects and nature, and how can we narrow the knowledge gap that there might be for the world of insects. So a few opportunities that for students, and also some for early career researchers. We have free membership for a year. We have a special event just for students, which happens at the end of March. It will be in London next year. And we have specific funds that student members can access, particularly to attend conferences. And I help to oversee a student outreach fund, which the next deadline for is just in the beginning of December. So you're very welcome to apply for that if you become a member. We also have awards for early career research, and we also have a writing award for students for science communication. So that closes at the end of December, and you write an article about insects, and it could potentially end up in our membership magazine. And just to highlight 2 events, so we have an annual big kind of entomology conference called ENTO. So next year's ENTO 26 will be in Cardiff in September. And we'd also have our own, behaviour special interest group. And that will be in February in Birmingham, so in the Midlands of England in the UK next year. So overall, my kind of remit is looking at the public understanding of insect science. And from our strategies is the kind of high level things that we try and focus on, for thinking about wide audiences, engaging new audiences, inspiring the next generation. And we have a long-term mission to think about a network of RS ambassadors, which I'm not directly involved with. And I'm really pleased to see that both Andy and Ellen's work definitely fits in with this as well. So some of the things we do go to large science shows, large science exhibitions. One of the ones we've been to for the last few years is called New Scientist Live. You may be aware of the New Scientist magazine. But New Scientist Live is also an actual physical show that happens in East London in the Excel Exhibition Centre every year. So we've put on different activities as part of an interactive stand. This is a picture from last year, showing we've got Aardman characters. So we partnered with Aardman Animations for their Lord of the Flies TV show. So we had some of their characters on our stand last year. We always bring live insects as well, which some people love, some people hate, but it usually generates really good conversations. So behind me, I have different terraria, and I bring my insect pets to meet lots of people. This year we had a focus on a particular book that we've co-published called Insectarium, which is a giant book that's got really beautiful illustrations. And it's got some really lovely text by Dave Goulson, who Ellen has worked with. So I put together a stage show. So that picture on the right shows Dave and also Emily Carter, who's the illustrator, talking about that particular book. This may look really quite high level and complex, but the first thing I ever did insect outreach wise was when I was a master's student at Imperial College at Silver Park campus outside of London. They had a campus open day to the public, and they showed off all different types of biodiversity nature. And the first thing I ever did with the public was to collaborate with someone else working on a table all about invertebrates. And we talked about things like harvestmen versus spiders, how are they different? Rogue beetles or carabid beetles, so Staphylinnae or Caribidae, how are they different? And that was the first experience I had of developing activities and how to talk to the public, and also thinking about how much to say and how much not to say to generate questions in the conversation with people. So these small things and experience that one can build up early on in your career can kind of lead to later larger experiences if that's something you want to do. Just to highlight, we always recruit volunteers and give opportunities for people to have that experience on our stands. So usually from our membership, we will invite people to volunteer for this. We're aware that volunteering isn't always accessible to people, but as a charity, we can't pay for everything, unfortunately. But yeah, we usually reimburse like travel and usually lunch for the day. It's how we run that. I've been involved in several online events. So in the UK, we have an organisation called STEM Learning. So they will connect scientists who are in businesses or universities, research institutes, with schools, different school groups that could be young children, older children, people who are at sort of 16 to 18, kind of college, thinking about next steps. So I put together this year a talk during Insect Week, which I'll mention in a minute. We focused our talk on the different kind of importances of insects. Obviously, pollination is one of the things that a lot of people know about, but things like decomposition, biological control, kind of being important in kind of wider food networks. Feeding vertebrates is really important things that insects do. So 3 of us did little talks, and we also opened up for questions as well. And that got delivered online to 1,500 students, which was felt very impactful for just half an hour's bit of work, effort really. A similar scheme to this is Skype a Scientist, which I believe is a globally accessible scheme, and they will connect scientists with school groups, and you can agree the kind of the knowledge levels, the backgrounds, what kind of thing to focus on. And I've done that a long time ago. It was really, really fun. I think a lot of the school groups are based in the US, but I think they're also all around the world as well. So I recommend getting in touch with Skype a Scientist. Another way that we engage the public with outreach is through a public garden that we have. So this is actually in East London, near the 2012 Olympic Park. We have this garden that has habitats for insects. It's got specific planting, so there are floral resources all throughout the year. It's got deadwood habitats, different places where insects can hibernate, also can lay their eggs, can shelter. And the structure that you can see in the middle there is inspired by an insect compound eye. It's got these beautiful panels, so exciting coloured light happens when it's really sunny. But we also got a electricity within there. We've got a screen that you can show images, and you can link up things like microscopes and show small things really big. So we've been beginning this year to deliver educational sessions with the Field Studies Council, who do a lot of outdoor learning in England and Wales and the UK. And we've also collaborated with the local town council. So I've done some sessions for their like adult learning as well. So it's a really new thing for us. It only got installed just over a year ago, and we're still trying to work out the kind of potential of this space. It's a really exciting thing, and we have a kind of outdoor space for our society, which is really fun. I wanted to briefly mention this collaboration with Aardman. So Aardman Animations are the company who have done things like Shaun the Sheep or Wallace and Gromit, which are probably familiar. But they also have this really fab animated TV series about Lloyd of the Flies. So Lord of the Flies is a housefly. He lives in a bin in the kitchen, and the series is all about his exciting adventures. He has particular friends, including Abacus the woodlouse, but he has over 1,000 maggot siblings, and they go on different adventures and do funny things. There's scientific content in that as well. Different scientists have been consultants on that series. But with what we did with Aardman is we helped develop content for an augmented reality like smartphone trail. So at different sites around the UK last year, this year, and to be confirmed for next year. With the smartphone, you can kind of interact on a nature reserve with different stations that are there, and they might highlight specific habitats that are there, things that Lloyd might be doing, things he might have found. You can kind of watch like maggots burping as they're eating apple core or something. And it's quite fun and interactive, and families seem to really enjoy this. Just something I had no idea about, that one could even begin to do this, but I think it's a really like different way of engaging, particularly families. Just wanted to highlight Insect Week. So our society coordinates this at the end of June every year. It's often based around different types of events, which could be something like a bug hunt on a nature reserve or a tour of a museum, but they could also be quite non-scientific. So different types of artistic workshops, different things that could happen within schools, within public libraries, shopping centres, different types of things, but all relating to insects in some form. So we're thinking ahead to 2026. It will be 22nd to 28th of June next year. And if you want to find out more, do go to insectweek.org. If you want to take part in some way, we always welcome, wherever you are in the world, people to take part. So I'm on to my last slide now, which is kind of what I've called lessons learned. And yeah, things I've picked up on that seem to have really good impacts. So yeah, always using really like beautiful imagery of insects to attract interest, and seeing Ellen's really fantastic videos just then. And I love the idea of those larvae having their own little natural snorkels to breathe in the lagoons. It's fantastic. And I think with insects, often they're really small compared to, like, you know, a cheetah or a lion. So making small things bigger and kind of showing how they function and they work, relatable. Often when I'm holding a live insect, I'll actually tell people this is where it eats, this is where it poops. People don't always imagine that they are just animals. They function similar to us in many ways. So I think that's really important. We're very keen to collaborate with others, particularly thinking about knowledge exchange, how to like have a bigger shared audience all together and have new audiences. And we're also very clear about having very simple and clear objectives for evaluating impact. I can see both with Andy and Ellen that they've reported their findings and they've had very clear ideas about the focus and reasons for what they're doing in their specific projects. I think that's really, really important. But I think sometimes when you're doing citizen science or a particular outreach project, it might be part of a wider research project. Sometimes you need to do this to get that research project funding to begin with. And you have to show the impact. Is it a behaviour change? Is it, as Andy was saying, that particular kind of action or whatever? Is it a specific feeling that's changed or something they might do different in the future? Ways of measuring that or ways of showing evidence or getting testimonials is really important. And lastly, I always want to sort of make sure there are opportunities for early career scientists to have these experiences. Not everyone wants to do this. I totally respect that, but I think it's great if everyone can try. And sometimes people are often really surprised at how much they might enjoy it, and how the challenge of adapting your message to different audiences, different backgrounds, different languages. So yeah, I think all those kind of things are really important to explore. So that's all from me. Our website is royensoc.co.uk, and people are welcome to contact me if they wish. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Fran. So yeah, I think all of you have a lot of overlapping arguments, especially about catching the attention of the audience with like nice imagery or a good hook for attention. So I think I will share my slide again, and we will finish on the... Does it work? Yes, I think it works. I will finish with this little list of tips that we try to build together. So as Fran said, I think it's nice if everyone can at least try to do science outreach. for one reason is that it matters. I hope that after hearing these three speakers, you are convinced that it is important to communicate with the society. The outreach and citizen science is basically a link between us researcher and the society. Also, it will give you some advantages because it can help you advance your career and also find another path if you're not really interested in science anymore, but you want to do science communication. So it's good to have developed these skills during your early career years. I think it's also a good learning curve. The more you engage, the more opportunities arise, the more you can build up these skills. And also now there are dedicated prize grants for people engaging in this kind of things. Of course, it's not only advantages, it's also difficult as a researcher to maintain a good balance between doing outreach and research. And sometimes it takes a lot of time, investment, energy to make things work. So you heard about Ellen, that she was trying to catch this hoverfly. It was not working, but then she had a good surprise and found other things. So sometimes there are a lot of trials and errors, and it's part of the game. So to finish on this list of tips, and then I will go through the question. As I said before, we identified some overlapping arguments between the three presentations. So we divided the tips between outreach and citizen science and then some general ones. So for the outreach, it's important to be on the lookout, join mailing lists or start training if you want to see collaborative action that you think you can help. You can also write outreach paper. For example, the journal Frontiers for Young Minds is really interesting because basically you get reviewed by kids. So it's a fun exercise for a researcher. Andy already talked about this paper by Lampert, so it will be noted in the chat if you want to check it, of the importance to have agency in the outreach. And yeah, to make students engage, so that sometimes it's not easy. You have to find a fun, creative way to make them interested, to gamify learning, something like that. For the citizen science, we saw that we have to keep activities easy, low cost, like the Overfly Diagon project or the Insect Investigator project, and include something that they can create or monitor. And we saw with Ellen, she talked about the importance of communicating about your findings with YouTube, with newsletter, things like that. And I think the main two arguments about this is if you want to start doing outreach or citizen science, you have to start small and start local to see how much of your time and energy you can use for this. So yeah, I think I don't know if you guys want to add something about this. I would start to check the chat in the meantime.
I would add something to the gamify of the learning aspect. That it can be quite. That doesn't mean you have to go out and make an app necessarily. So I would say one of the biggest inspirations we've had is talking to teachers because they know their students, they know how they learn, and you can adapt your message to that feedback from the teacher. So you can gamify in a way, deliver whatever it is you're offering with feedback from the teachers. Yeah.
Okay, so I think the first question for the chat is for you, Andy. So it's Tang who asks you, which part of the insect investigator model works best for engaging students?
Hi, Thang. I hope Brizzy's nice. I thought about this when I read this. I thought, I wonder what you mean, which part of it? And then I sat on it for a couple of minutes. And I would say the teachers in that context are the most important part. Because if you don't have, if you're going to work with a school and you have a teacher who is not motivated to be part of what you want to do, who has been told that they have to take on more citizen science into their teaching, then that's like the deal breaker. It's a lot harder to work with a teacher who isn't intrinsically motivated to be part of something, right? So the teacher and finding the right teachers, and maybe that's part of that starting small, starting local. It could be a teacher you know, maybe it's your kid's school. That's actually how I started it in Australia. Getting to know the teachers and then ping-ponging ideas off the teachers. But the rest of Insect Investigators it's a really big, complicated, logistically challenging project. So yeah, we might have to talk about that in private one day.
But all sides of project matters. I know that Ellen
Yeah.
is like, don't feel bad about this. So yeah, and then I have a question for Ellen, I think. I think there are two questions that are like similar. But first one is there any support from government worldwide in teaching children and young people? Is there any particular country that does it well?
Oh,
Hardcore. I think because you talk about the fact that some kids feel disconnected from nature.
yeah, that's. I'm afraid that's just my experience from my country. Because, you know, I was hearing these things where, you know, children have never held a slug in their hand, things like stuff that, you know, and that, you know, they're just terrified of nature and terrified of getting dirty, and just these things just keep just happening that worries me a lot. So anything we can do in schools and out of school to encourage kiddies to get better connected. I really couldn't comment on whether there's a country that does it better or a government that drives this better, though. I agree with what Andy was saying about teachers. Like it's just a non-starter if you don't have an enthusiastic teacher to take something forward.
So there was another question by a runner scientist that is a bit related to this topic, but it was not addressed to anyone in particular. So any of you three can try to answer that. What are some suggestions toward the school administration or government education ministry to make engaging the children more effective?
I can have a go if you wish.
Yeah, sure.
So I guess I can't talk about how to directly engage with governments. It's only something that my society has only recently started to do. But for school administration, or how to like start with a teacher, I think it's really showing how insects can be particularly relevant to the curriculum. I know the curriculum will vary between countries. Even within the UK, we have different curriculum, but really showing how insects and different species of insects, different modes of insect, like how you study them, the different examples of how you can fit them into the curricula is really important. Because often, particularly in the UK, teachers are very busy people and they need simple, easy things that will slot into their 30-minute, 40-minute lesson slots. So yeah, I think it's really looking at what they need to help you work with them. Exactly what Andy was saying.
We have in Australia citizen science, it's in the curriculum, it's mentioned several times. So if it's not in your government's, so the Department of Education, if they don't have citizen science in their curriculum, then you should be banging on the door saying, why the hell have you not got it in your curriculum?
So I think related to what you were saying, Steve is saying, I suspect that children in their wild states love slugs and bugs, but parental disgust changes that. And there is another question by Tang that is a bit related to that, which is what is the biggest barrier to engaging the public with the insect science? So I assume that it's like bugs are disgusting, kind of. What is your take on that?
Ellen, do you want to go first?
Well, yeah, I think maybe it's that association that they're going to sting you, they're going to bite you, they're going to spread disease. You know, that's immediately what people think of, isn't it? And then lots of insects look like the ones that will bite you and sting you. And then there's spiders, which is a whole different group of that inspires lots of fear, doesn't it? Unnecessarily. So I guess it's that initial kind of response to those things which are more well known, aren't they? And it's less sort of well known and appreciated their roles in a positive way, perhaps. So maybe that's what it should be about, is just and that's what we're all doing, isn't it? Is trying to spread the word on all the positive, incredible, amazing, diverse things there are to know about the insect world.
Shall I come in as well? I think I definitely say there's definitely a fear factor for some types of insects, and obviously around the world there are different risks in different countries. Andy being in Australia will have quite a different risks to what we have in the UK. But I'd also say that in the UK, definitely sometimes insects and studying insects is not seen as really kind of hardcore science. Sometimes it's seen as something you do outside for fun. We have forest schools that are great things when children are really young, but they're not often seen as something that you might do when you're older. So sometimes showing the relevance of why insects are really important for all different types of science, biology, chemistry, physics are the classic three sciences that might be taught to, say, teenagers in the UK. But often you don't really see insects being part of really important science and technology. Natural history is often seen as quite a soft science, and I think reframing that is really important.
Yeah, I think that's also, just building on Steve's question or statement there, it's also so important, or possibly why we're all working with children, is because before the parents influence them too much and they're biased by their parents, you get them to understand, or you seed that anyway, and then they ask those critical questions of their parents later on, like, why do you think a spider is disgusting? Yeah, that's can be very powerful.
So I think we only have a few minutes left. We are already finishing the time slot, but there is still one question. And I have some questions that I would also like to ask all of you. So there is one question by Tang for you, Ellen. It's, what is the biggest misconception people have about other hoverflies?
Probably the state. So some of them look like wasps and bees. So they think that they're, because a lot of them, the ones, especially the ones you see that are typical flower visitors, are black and yellow, and they look like they could sting you. So I think probably that's the biggest misconception.
They are mimicking bees, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Or, well, the other theory is that they're
Or-
saying, I'm super fast, don't bother trying to catch me.
Makes sense. So yeah, you guys were all talking about how it's important to find a way to start the discussion, to engage. So it seems that the first contact with the audience, kids or adults, is the most important. So I was going to ask, in your opinion, what is a good hook to insects? If imagine you are at a booth and you have to attract people, so what type of thing you would use, like a sentence or I don't know, a prop?
I can kick this off. So often I bring my own live insect pets, and I might hold something in my hands and go, do you know what this is? And often the fact that I've got a live animal with me, sorry, I didn't mean to raise my hands. I've got a live animal with me means that this really starts a conversation straight away. And also how they respond can give me information as to what they know and how I can therefore proceed the conversation.
Yeah, Andy, you wanted to comment on that?
Like, do you like chocolate? Do you eat fruit? What sort of fruit do you like? That sort of stuff. Did you know if there were no insects, we would be waiting around in 30 centimeters of crap? And another one I like, which is really shocking, is taking roadkill to schools, because we have quite a lot of it in Australia. Or I put stuff out in the bush and let things come to it, maggots, etc. And then you have that. That's really shocking in a way, like when you see that the insects are taking this bird apart, for example. And some of the kids react quite negatively to it. And it's such, like, I feel bad about that in a way, but the teachers are like, you know what? This is the facts of life. Like, this is great. Let's go with that. But I probably wouldn't take it to a really fine private school, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, you always have to adapt the message, right? So I don't know, Ellen, if you want to, yeah.
Having a live animal. So that when I've not had much experience of going in schools and introducing them to beasties, but I certainly took some, thinking they're going to be most interested to see this animal. I felt bad for the animal because they were larvae, and they were then the children got in a very neat row, much to the teachers' disgust, and all wanted to hold the larvae, and that those larvae were probably very hot and bothered by the end of being passed around all these little paws. But they all but like maybe two wanted to hold them, which I thought was amazing. So I think just having that, having something live to look at is really engaging if you're ever going to try and capture attention. I don't know about lions, but I was going to do a sort of soapbox thing where you stand on a box in Brighton, which is the closest city to us at Sussex University, and you tell people about your research, and it's supposed to be super engaging. And I was going to do that one year, but quite rudely, I wasn't selected at the last minute. But what I was going to do was dress up. I know, Fran. What I was going to do was dress up as a rat-tailed maggot, and I reckon that would probably get lots of lots of attention.
Oh, you all have really funny ideas. So yeah, I think it's now time to finish this session. I want to thank everyone in the chat for their question, and thank you to Andy, Ellen, and Fran for their inspiring presentation and really cool project.